You want me to do this? Okay. Are we live now? Yes. We can pay attention. Okay, anyhow, we'll talk more about those later. They're amazing.
Are you going to get it right?
Am I going to get it? Of course I'm going to. We lived and breathed this show. So, do be sure. So the second half of this exhibition, we've just heard from Lisa, and welcome back. And if you're joining us from online, then please do feel part of the day. The opportunity is there to ask questions via the online channel, which you can dial through our audience here. And we'll bring you in later on today. The second half, this first half of the morning, if you like, is to do with science. And by way of introduction, Ollie Steeds here is going to introduce us to those people who form part of Oceansensus and the research they've done. Now, Ollie is, by his own profession, under his own crusade. He's an investigative journalist and one of the earliest members of the Royal Geographic Society of Explorers. And he has a single quest, really, which is to find out what is going on at the bottom of the ocean. It's a straightforward question enough, but it led him to some very interesting places, as you can mind. So he is, if you like, the sort of guy who says to me, what you need in this barn is a big yellow submarine. And we're going to call it Nemo, which is a lovely point back to Lisa's there, because Nemo is the most remote place. And so the idea is we can congregate there. We can all own the ocean. It's part of what we all universally have in our identity. And there we'll find ourselves. So anyhow, this is the sort of conversations that Ollie and I go down the road of. So Ollie, thank you for joining us today and inspiring us on the second half. I think you're here.
Thank you. Thank you, Johnny. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening to all those of you joining us online as well. It's a great treat to be invited to share a few words by Johnny. He gave me a general brief, which was, you can say whatever you want. And that is a phenomenal opportunity and something I take very seriously. As I don't often get the opportunity to say what I like. So bear with me. What we're going to try and do is weave three beats of history together to try and tell a wider story about where we've come from, where we are now, and where we're going. So it's an apology as well to our scientists who are here, because it's going to be an introduction to what we know now about science as well, about the ocean. So let's get started if we can. We're going to start with our inner fish, and that's going to be a theme which is going to flow throughout this little story. So the first beat in history is 400 million years ago. We used to be fish, and we used to look like this. This is the ticklet fish, and it's our first terrestrial explorer. We carry the explorer gene of the ticklet fish with us, as we've wonderfully heard from Lisa this morning. And I think we'll call this one Marina, because she comes from the sea. And about 400 million years ago or so, she crawled out onto land. It was one small flip for Marina, one giant leap for humankind. And let's not forget her as we go on this little journey together in the next few minutes, not least because of that explorer impulse, but also because we still carry a number of memories of how we used to be fish. When we were all embryos, we had gills. Our blood has the same salinity as the ocean. We cry salty tears. We hiccup, all because we used to be fish. I think. Can I have that correct from our scientist friends? Over there? Yes, okay, good. I'm glad that is correct. But all because we used to be fish. So that's the first anchor point, and we're going to come back to the ticklet fish in a moment. Secondly, this wonderful image. 24th of December, 1968. It's been named Earthrise. And it changed how we saw ourselves. It created a shift in global perspective. A small, beautiful, isolated planet floating in the vastness of space. One species living on a shared, fragile planet. One species living with millions and millions of others, making life possible together. It's an image of global unity, of planetary fragility, of spaceship Earth, and a need for cooperation if we want to survive and thrive. The third date is the 5th of October, 2024. Today. Have I got the date right? Hope so. So what do we know about the blue bit? Now, can we play the video, or do I play it from here? Let me see. So these beautiful images that you see here are taken by the Schmidt Ocean Institute with a robot down at the depths, in the depths of the ocean, off their vessel Falcor 2. We have Carly from the Schmidt Ocean Institute who is with us today, and we'll be hearing a little bit more from her later. But I'm just going to share these photos throughout the remainder, this wonderful video throughout the remainder of my talk. So what do we know about the ocean? Well, many of us know that it covers over 70%, 71% or so of the surface of our planet. It's dark below 200 meters. On average, it's about 4,000 meters deep. And this three-dimensional liquid living space is over 90% of our biosphere, where there is life on Earth. We know that the ocean gives us most of the air that we breathe. We know that it regulates our atmosphere, that it regulates our climate and regulates our planetary chemistry. We know the ocean feeds billions of us and provides cures to some of our diseases. We also know that the ocean is the heart of our planet, and it makes all life on Earth possible. But due to some strange kink in our brilliance, we have somehow come to a point where the most important part of our planet, the heart of our planet, is also the least known part of our planet and the least protected part of our planet. Now, I'm not Homer Simpson, but even I can understand that that is not a very sensible position for us to be in. Not least, of course, because of the climate and the biodiversity crisis which we face. And thanks to us, of course, the ocean is changing faster than it has for hundreds of millions of years. We know that the decisions that we make in the next 10 years will affect the next 1,000, maybe even the next 10,000 years. So the question posed by Lisa already and by Johnny is, well, what are we actually going to do about it? This is on our watch. Well, fortunately, there is some good news to all of this. By our great fortune and great intelligence, we've obviously ignored this wonderful part of our planet, the most important part of our planet. It is the last great frontier on our planet. But we also have the technology available to us now to discover more of our planet in the next 10 years than we did in the last 1,000 years or the last 10,000 years. It is the last frontier on Earth, and we have the opportunity to go and find out what lives there. And it turns out that life has been evolving in our ocean for nearly 4 billion years. Now that's 3 times longer than on land. If we look at the phyletic diversity at the top of the food chain, there's 34 phyla known on Earth at the moment. 33 are in the ocean, 12 are on land. There's a bit of a crossover, but that tells us that there's far greater diversity at the top of the food chain, top of the tree of life, at the phyletic level, than there is on land. But how many species actually live in the ocean? We really no concrete idea how many species, genus, families, order, class, or phyla there are on the whole tree of life. It could be hundreds of thousands, it could be 1 or 2 million, it could be 10 million. There's a large range there. And so that tells us that we don't really know. What we do know so far is that there's 240,000 species that we've found so far. But at max, that's going to be 10% of what lives in our ocean. That's it. So what about the rest of it? Well, we like to call it dark taxa. We know it's there, but we don't know what it is, and we don't know how they sustain and benefit all life on Earth. So without getting too Rumsfeldian about it, it is not what we know, but what we don't know, and that is what should be exciting us. It's the not knowns that should be blowing our minds. Apologies to Donald Rumsfeld. But imagine if we could actually start to discover what lives in the sea. Well, first up, if we were able to accelerate our understanding of what lives in the sea, it would spark a scientific revolution. Because if we're able to sequence and decode the DNA of ocean life, we will find the keys to 4 billion years of our evolution. The ocean genome, the combination of this genetic knowledge that underpins oxygen production, climate regulation, global food security, human well-being, and a sustainable ocean and planet. Unlocking this knowledge will advance our knowledge of fundamental biology that sustains all life on Earth. So, not a bad start. It would also help us preserve life, because we know what the impact is which we're having on Earth at the moment. And on the current trajectory, the majority of species are likely to be lost during the Anthropocene era. So discovering ocean life now will help us preserve the legacy of 4 billion years of evolution for generations to come. But for those with a perhaps more immediate disposition, what benefit could this bring us sooner? Well, if we take the story of the simple cone snail to give you a bit more of a molluscan flavor to what's to come. Now, some of these extraordinary cone snails, they secrete iron. And I think just for shits and giggles, if that's correct, we'll come back to that when we talk about it. But these mighty cone snails are found to have some of the deadliest toxins on Earth. Also, alongside them, they have these toxins create a painkiller that's 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. And apparently it's also non-addictive, although we're having a nodding here. You may know how they figure that out. How do you figure out whether they're not? There'll be an interesting science paper to read on the subject. How do you figure out how something 1,000 times more powerful than morphine is non-addictive? Anyway, we'll come to that later. But this is life under pressure. This is life living at up to 1,100 the pressure than we have on the surface. So full ocean depth is 11,000 meters down. Every 10 meters you descend into the deep sea, you get an additional atmosphere of pressure that's building up from the weight of the water above you. So at full ocean depth, it's 1,100 times the pressure than on the surface. This is where animals are evolving in a dark, liquid world. Sometimes they're living next to hydrothermal vents that we'll see in this film. And these vents are pumping out liquid minerals with life at temperatures of over 450 degrees Celsius. And under pressure, life is evolving in weird and wonderful ways, with extraordinary biochemical activity. And this is providing us with cures to diseases like HIV, AIDS, cystic fibrosis, and cancers, to name but a few. But imagine if we could harness more of these marine genetic resources. How could they galvanize marine biotech? So over the next 60 seconds or so, I'm going to show you a few of the species which we found recently on our work with Oceansensus. So Oceansensus is a new global program, a planetary census to discover what lives in the ocean. It's endorsed by the United Nations Ocean Decade. And our job is to go out into the world's ocean and find new species. So the next 60 seconds, I'm just going to show you some of the species which we found recently in the Arctic, where hopefully you'll be going soon. But below the surface at 2,000–3,000 meters, there are extraordinary animals which are living there. It's also one of the least, there's the least biodiversity in the Arctic than we find in many other oceans. Compared to the Antarctica, I think, there's a lot more biodiversity in Antarctica than the Arctic. And in February, March, we're joining forces with the Schmidt Ocean Institute to undertake a mission down to the South Sandwich Islands, down near Antarctica, to discover ocean life down there. So next year we'll be able to share what the species are. Anyway, here's a few of the species which scientists at this very hour are working on in a taxonomic workshop up in Tromsø. So after the expedition, they brought all those species back, and they're now looking through to determine which species are new. So we're just going to see if I can play this video. So this first one is an eel pout. Now, eel pouts are pretty incredible animals. And they give us a few clues to how they can survive in the frigid waters of the Arctic. In particular, these eel pouts have antifreeze in their blood, which enables them to survive. Oh, they put spooky music on it as well. Excellent. Let's turn the music down a little bit so you can hear me. That's the eel pout. Here we've got a mysid shrimp with a bodies and antenna that help them detect signals and movements in the water that aid navigation and location of food. Next up, we've got a carnivorous sponge. This captures small prey such as crustaceans using these hook-like spicules, I think they're called. Another sponge. This is a stunning silica-based skeletal structure that's characteristic of a lot of deep-sea glass sponges. Next up, an amphipod, crustaceans with formidable exoskeletons, and they often live near these hydrothermal vents and cold seeps. And another glass sponge, silica-based skeleton that again resembles fragile glass. And finally, the snailfish, which has these the delicate whiskers that you could see there provide the sensory organs that detect movement and vibrations in the pitch black water. So just a little snapshot into some of the species which we are discovering in the deep sea. Now let's go back to our other film, if I can. Here we go. Okay, Octopus Garden. There we go. So, discovering ocean life, compared to many of the other great challenges that we face on Earth, is relatively straightforward, I think. There are ways in which we can accelerate species discovery. We can overcome some of the challenges that we face. At the moment, we still discover the same number of species as we did back in the mid-1800s, about sort of 2,000 or so a year. Now, by harnessing breakthrough technologies in high-resolution imaging, in sequencing and machine learning, we can speed up the discovery of ocean life in a process called cyber taxonomy, which is what we call it and other scientists call it, which enables us to harness those technologies to speed up that process of discovery, a new approach to taxonomy. So we can do it. We're already discovering hundreds and hundreds of new species. Oceansensus is this global alliance of partners coming together from around the world to join, to come together and share resources to undertake this planetary census. There are scientists from over 350 institutes already participating, and dozens of large partners, national research institutes and others around the world who are participating in this collective effort. We just got started. We're 18 months in, so you'll be hearing hopefully a lot more about the Ocean Census in good time. So, we're on track to try and discover. We have a goal of 100,000 species, because that will be a weight of new knowledge which will help transform our understanding of life on Earth. That's what we're aiming for. We've got a long way to go there. It's an ambition. It's simply a milestone rather than a goal or a target. Of course, our goal and our North Star needs to be discovering hundreds of thousands of new species. That's what the ocean needs us to do. That's what the planet and people need us to do. But the fly in the ointment which we have is that, of course, we remain largely disconnected from the ocean, from this three-dimensional living space, from the biosphere where there is the majority of life on Earth. Now, space has a place in our hearts and a place in our minds. We see it across all forms of culture. It fuels our imagination, and it inspires us with dreams of progress. Now, our relationship with the ocean is a little bit more complex. Seeing Lisa's films and hearing her, it terrifies me to think, well, the power of the ocean and how we can sail and circumnavigate and undertake research in such difficult environments. But below the surface as well, of course, we remain disconnected. And in many ways, I think it's because the surface of the sea is simply a mirror to the sky. The ocean, in all its depth and its diversity and its wonder and majesty, is out of sight and out of mind for so many of us. We are blind to the blue planet that we live on, this blue planet that sustains all life on Earth. So what do we need to do? Well, relatively, it's quite simple. If we look back at the Earthrise, a global shift of consciousness, that's all we need to do. We just need another one of those, a big global shift in perspective of how we see ourselves, like that photo of Earthrise. And somehow we need to I think, remember Marina, the first explorer, the ticklet fish. And somehow we need to find our inner fish. And we need to find a way to return to our aquatic roots. And that is what Ocean Rising is all about, which is an initiative which Schmidt Ocean Institute and Nekton have joined forces on to try and inspire more people to deepen their cultural connection with the ocean. And it is a simple call to action, to get creative and find new ways to deepen our connection with the ocean. It's pretty simple. It's a creative movement. It's people and organizations all doing something. Johnny and Tessa have found their inner fish, and the ticklet force is strong with you both. And you've chosen to put on this exhibition. You've chosen to undertake a journey into artistic expression, to be able to share your vision with the world, and to engage people to think about the ocean in profoundly different ways. And you're both not alone. And we'll be hearing from Heather on some other creative ways in which different organizations, I think Selfridges and others, are getting involved in creative ways. And Ocean Rising and Johnny and Tessa, you're part of a legion. There are extraordinary people doing extraordinary things in the world, whether it's Premiership footballers who are kicking plastic bottles into football nets in front of their fans to spread the word about ocean plastic that was then broadcast live to the world by Sky. That was a corporate decision made by them to try and engage an audience of people, football fans, who didn't really know much about the ocean. And it's that community. It's not the ocean choir, but it's the people outside the choir that we need to engage and inspire with. Find new imaginative ways to engage those audiences, those people around the world. It could be a shoemaker deciding that they would make a shoe made out of algae, like Vivo Barefoot, a chap called Galahad Clark, who I think lives quite near here. Or a fashion brand stitching ocean imagery into their designs, as Uniqlo have done with Ocean Rising recently. Or a comedy show, which you can do underwater, which we did back in 2016 with comedians in the United States. We can do that comedy show again, and I look to a brilliant comedian who is with us, and throw the challenge to you, good sir, if you would like to go into a submersible and do a live comedy show underwater, I'd be delighted to facilitate that. You know how to tell stories, you know how to inspire people, you know how to make people laugh, and we need more people to laugh about the ocean and about our plight. There's so much that we hear about the doom and the gloom and the negativity which exists around the ocean. And of course, that's an important story, let's not forget it. But as my dear old grandmother, she's said to me as a journalist, she said, "You've got to give people a dream. You're just giving them a nightmare." And Martin Luther King didn't say, "I have a nightmare." He said, "I have a dream." Give people a dream. Find imaginative, inspiring ways to give people hope and wonder. And that's what comedy can do. That was the instructions I was given by a chap called Don Walsh, who was the first man alongside Jacques Picard to descend 11,000 meters down to the deepest part of the ocean back in 1960. And when I went to see him and said I was embarking on this journey away from being an investigative broadcast journalist into the ocean, what advice can you give me? He simply said, make people laugh more. So we have a challenge. I throw it to you, good sir. Anyway, on and on we can go. We can weave the ocean into the fabric of culture, into the fabric of our lives. And that's what we're trying to do with Ocean Rising. So my request to you all is to try and find your inner fish. Find out, reconnect with Marina, with that explorer impulse, with the recognition that this is where we came from. We all used to be fish. We are still fish in so many different and profound ways. And get creative for the ocean. Find imaginative, creative ways in which you can create a cultural intervention for the ocean across any part of culture, whether that's the arts, and comedy, and sports, gaming, film, food, fashion, or song. Find your inner fish and join the rising. Thank you.